Hi and welcome everybody to the SUSE QE Tools Workshop. Today we would like to talk about issue management, reporting. That's a topic which we had already 1.5 years ago. So for today, the topic was announced as test issue management best practices, how to file new test tickets properly, assign to appropriate teams, triage issues, etc. Related to that, we had in March 2022. If you want, there's the recording is up, how to report tickets and investigate issues, etc. So I will mention it shortly how we go from there, but then the focus for today should be on how does it look like then in the test issue management software that is for OpenSUSE and SLE tests, progress open. So we start from openQA, and this shows the list of tests on OpenSUSE.org. For example, what we can do is we can take a look into the last 500 finished jobs. Sometimes we have this checkbox for to do. And if we go there, then we can, for example, see, well, what we see here is 100 jobs which do not have any issue link or label or something. Many of them we can ignore because they are outside any group and they are based automated investigation jobs like that one. What we could do is we can take that job and follow to the original job for which the investigation triggered for, or we find also other like that one. So let's take that one for an example. That's a test in openSUSE Tumbleweed Legacy x86 in the newly created project for the 32-bit variant of Tumbleweed that always existed, but is now part of a separate project. And what we see is there is this kernel test. We take a look at dependencies, then we can see that's part of a bigger inheritance chain. So there are some image creation jobs which do the initial installation, then we install LTP, and then various specific individual LTP tests are executed. Now if we take a look into details, then we will find that there are quite some modules are successful and eventually there is a failure, for example, as visible here with the kernel. Now, is that issue known already or not? I don't know, but we can check is on comments. We can check is there any bug reference. Well, there is not. There is a comment by the user. That's GeekoTest. GeekoTest is like a bot account, and GeekoTest writes this comment for automatic investigation jobs, and it mentions a retry job. It mentions only a retry job. Why is that? Because there's no last good recorded skipping regression investigation, meaning that in this history, at least as long as it exists on openQA, with maybe all the results had been removed already, there doesn't seem to be any good. If you go to investigation, then we can also see that there is not much detail here because it says last good not found. And if we take a look on next and previous results, then we can see that this clearly reproduced. This is in openSUSE Tumbleweed kernel, so it's not like, you know, a job. Yeah, I would say that's a production job, but I know that the SUSE QE kernel squad is maybe sometimes tracking the issues differently. So I'm not sure if issue report already exists about this ticket. I would say we can report one regardless with the information that we have here. So how to report an issue, and is it a product issue, test issue? Well, I would say if we would have full information here, like up to 4 jobs from automatic investigation, it would tell us like, hey, this is the last time the product was fine. This is the last time the tests were fine. Going back to, cross-checking with the last good of tests and the last good of product, we could find out, is this an infrastructure issue, an issue outside the control of the test? Is it failing since a change in test code was triggered, or is it failing since a change in product was triggered? As we found out already before, there's no last code recorded, so I would say this pretty much reproduces that there is no really regression coming up in builds, but this test will continue to fail, and we either need a bug report, which might be, even older than that job, which is only a month ago, so there's no older build preserved, which is understandable because although this project is pretty recent. So maybe there is an existing bug report about that, maybe there is an existing progress ticket about it, but I'm not sure if I can find that. Maybe if I look up LTPMM in test results, I will find related tests like the x86-64 variant. That's true. So let's do that. I can type it into the search bar of openQA, or I can use the quick URL. So let me see if I can find matches. The first match here is the actual investigation job that we already saw referenced here on the comments. So this one says that there is an investigation job triggered with the ending number 0906, which is currently running. And this is what we see here. If you see at the bottom of my screen, the URL, the ending number is 0906. So it's that very job, which was, I mean, the job only failed 30 minutes ago, so this is a pretty recent failure. Yeah, if we compare that to jobs in other job groups, what we see is that like a variant of that also fails in AH64, in the AH64 port of Bumblebee. And this is the test in the x86-64 variant. This might have a longer history. So let's take a look here. And let's first check where does it actually fail. So it fails in PHP01 and VMA05. I don't really know what those modules mean, and it is I don't want to dive that deeply into the level of detail because what am I doing now? I'm now acting as a reviewer of tests. You can say that this is kind of a shallow level, but we need to cover some ground to be able to cover all. So what we see is that there are different modules failing here, but VMA05 is also listed here. So what does this one say? It says test process return unknown none 0 value, some test output first. And this one looks very similar. So let's assume it's the same issue, okay? What does the investigation tell us here? It tells us that also for x86-64, there was never a last good recorded. If we go into next and previous results, we can see that, okay, it's shifting in history a bit. So sometimes other modules show up, but VMA05 is always present. And this is also with the oldest result from about a month. So I'm feeling confident to say that the issue is not something specific about the architecture of 32-bit or 64-bit, but something that is common. So I'll actually use the 64-bit variant as a base, and now and I'm now saying that this is not a product issue because well, we don't have any reference, so I at least need the expertise of the QA engineers that have more expertise in the kernel testing area. And until we have that, I'm treating that as a test issue. Meaning, I can do it as simple as clicking on that link. That will do two things. First, it will show me where I need to report the issue, because you can already see in the URL at the bottom of my screen, this goes to progress openSUSE.org, unlike for a product issue where it says Bugzilla openSUSE. So just very shortly, and this is what we covered in March 2022 in this workshop topic I mentioned. If you would report a product issue, it would look something like this. It would open Bugzilla, and then it says openQA test fails in VM-A05. So what we could do is we can select all the kernel, all the write configuration here, and we can provide more detail in the subject line, and we can provide more detail here. The test suite description is not helpful. Last good. Unfortunately, that test produces the failure since the start of recording, which is only from one those unknown if there was ever any does good. So that's how I would write it, and I would put more details here, right? But let's go back, because this, well, I'm not sure if it's a product issue, and I can't say that this is. So I'm clicking the other link, reports test issue. Now I can do it in this window. I'm actually doing that in a separate tab. So my middle mouse button click, and now it says new issue. Where are we? Because I'm zoomed in a bit, it doesn't show me the full header. If I'm zoom out, yeah, you can see we are in an issue tracker, progress openSUSE.org, in the so-called openQA test project. And I can say test fails in VM-A05. It's not really that much detail. And please always, if you see that template, see it as a template, meaning that all the fields that can be changed, please consider changing them as well. So what can we write there? We can say we can use those details because the template wasn't able to provide that. I'm using syntax here, and what it this looks like something like, I don't know, what is it, like the LTP test runner output, like there does from the LTP test runner showing the output like this. The same error shows up on other architectures here. For example, that one on tumbleweed, I guess 632-bit. And then what did you see? That one. That one from and the H64 variant. Test to description null, that isn't helpful. I don't know the details at this point. So I will just well, right. No, I think I can describe something useful. Why is it null? Well, because unfortunately the test scenario maintainers did not add a description. They should add a description here, something about LTP, I guess. But as long as that isn't the case, the test, I need to, do the best on my own. Test executes the LTP test module based on a pre-installed UVIT demo. Reproducible failed since at least that is not helpful because actually failed since the beginning of record 100% reproducible in this scenario as well as the ones for the other. So expected result last good. No last good is known. I mean, the expected result, of course, should be that the test passes or pointing to a clear product issue. But for now, I can only comment more detail to say that no last good is known. The test failed since beginning of record. Any notes or addition before I save that? Good. So what else should I change? Any suggestions? That like a critical, like do I need to put it to urgent or something? I don't think it should because, you know, it's not like happening since yesterday, but was there all the time. Category, it could be bugs in existing tests, could be enhancement of existing tests, it could be infrastructure and new test. I would say it's bugs in existing tests because, you know, always failing, although it could be that it's something that was always that's a product issue and was like that for longer. That's I cannot know, right? I should change the subject because that's like the basic. That would mean if everybody files tickets like that, then in this issue list, it would fill up with test fails in A, test fails in B, test fails in foo, and so on. And you know, we can do better than that. So I'm using some keywords here, test fails of LTP kernel tests, tumbleweed 664 as well as 64 and 32-bit. Maybe that helps a bit. So I will create that ticket now, assuming that I don't know to which specific team that should go. Because if we would take a look here in the overview, then we can see that there are multiple sub-projects. So maybe it should go into one of those sub-projects. I mean, it doesn't say LTP or kernel in here, so I'm not immediately picking a sub-project, and we will see what happens then. Okay. So do I need to fill those other fields? I don't know about print or anything or difficulty. So, you know, I will leave it for now. I mean, tags, yeah, maybe. I mean, bug, probably. Kernel, yeah, that sounds likely. I can fill more. LTP, oh yeah, LTP is there. Something like LMM, maybe if it helps, if it's not ambiguous. So I'm creating that ticket. Now, what should I do with that ticket reference? Well, I mentioned jobs, so I can put that here as a label. Same here. That's the Edge 64 variant. There we go. Same here. I could look up more jobs and put this label there, including like, you know, in complete history, every single job. There are other means to put a label onto multiple jobs matching the same criteria. But at least for the future, like if the tumbleweed snapshot of the next day will fail in the very same way, then it doesn't trigger needless openQA investigation jobs, because we already know that it will fail, but instead it will just point to that progress ticket, which is good. That also means that another process is triggered, it's called openQA review. So openQA review is another system that runs in the background and is taking a look at tickets, and then let's assume that nobody's picking up on that ticket and the job is still failing, reproducing the very same, so that openQA carries over the ticket reference. Then eventually openQA review will put a comment on this ticket and say like, hey guys, the issue still reproduces. That answers the question for all tickets, like, is it still an issue? That there are two ways to answer that question. One is if there would be a comment saying issue still reproduces, and another one is following the latest link. If you follow the link to latest, this one is like, you know, a dynamic, like a static link, always pointing dynamically to the last result. Then it should show me, and yeah, it's still failing. Well, it was specifically about LTPM, the VMA05, and yeah, VMA05 failing. So we have that here. Now, we have this issue list. Let's take a look at that list of issue. I mean, who's working on it, okay? We can see that there are 696 tickets in there. I would say for a bug reporting tool, that's a quite usual, reasonable number. There are many projects which have many more bug reports, certainly, and many more tickets. But it's also, you know, the capacity of any single team that would see that as their backlog. So it's not like it means that there's immediately one team that can pick up tickets from those lists. So, but we can see that, you know, there are some tickets which have an assignee and they have additional late data, but we'll come to that. There is a wiki here, and this wiki describes how we work on tickets. And what you see here is ticket backlog triaging. This is something that, you know, the representatives of every SUSE QE squad should do, and they own a share of this backlog, a share of this issue tracker content, including all the sub-projects. So they should help to triage tickets. Like the ticket that I just created is a new ticket that should be triaged. Like, you know, a decision should be made. Who should work on that? Should we do it with priority? Is it actually something invalid that we need to reject, or is it something that can be worked on immediately, maybe because there's actually a known product issue? And there's a list of things that can be done first. So the first step that should be done is categorize the ticket. It doesn't, this one simply shows all the tickets that do not have any category. The ticket I just created did have the category bugs in existing tests, so it's not showing up in the list. And as we can see here, there are 14 tickets here. We can also see, if we sort it by update time, that apparently there was no full triaging done, let's say, since February, because this is the ticket which was last, the ticket with the most recent update furthest in the past. If we want to do the triaging, let's say if I would be now in the position that does the triaging, then reading the ticket or maybe understanding already what it is about from the subject, then I should decide. And I can use the context menu here. For this ticket, I know maintenance openQA setup for leap 15.5. So the idea was like for 15.5, which is, was released recently, there needs to be a maintenance setup. So it's not bugs in existing tests. It's also not infrastructure. That's actually new test. Okay. So simple to choose the category here. And with that, we narrow down the list to 13 entries. The goal is to have that list empty. Identify packages that have automated indirect testing or that have sufficient build time test suite. That's an including that one, I think they're all related. That pretty much sounds like enhancement to existing. Okay. Metadata check does not show up on GitHub like tidy does. That sounds also like an enhancement to existing test because it's not a test per se, but it's more like the surrounding ecosystem. Deep micro 15.4 and partition 1 megabytes expected. I guess that's bugs in existing tests. I mean, I might make mistakes here, right? But everything can be changed, and I think it's better to choose an initial category and then update it than not ever choose any category. And in the end, we need that list finish. Let's try if we can finish down that list. Test Inkscape CLI under GNOME system for random SVG. That's a new test, as well as capture audio output of Raspberry Pi real hardware. Tumbleweed leap test meeting follow-up. Sounds like new test. Fails too often. Bugs in existing tests. Extend encrypted install test. That's new test. And extend there. So those are all new tests. If anybody of you disagree, shout out, let me know. Hope test fails and such. Yeah, that's bugs in. Okay. So list is empty. Yay. High five to ourselves. For the first part of the triaging is done. The next one is, I'm going to skip that one specific subtask because we already categorized all of it. So that sub-team would be covered. This tag goal, no ticket without component or responsibility tag. And what that one does is it looks into the subject and says, subject doesn't contain anything and there are also no tags. Our ticket that we recently created also doesn't show up. Why does it not show up? We didn't use any square bracket in the subject. I mean, why should we? I'm going to tell you in a minute. But we did use some tags like kernel, right? And for that one, test fails install package simple after installation of 15.4 continuous rebuild DVD. The system has no repositories. I guess that one should go to, I know that now with internal knowledge, but I'm saying this is what person doing triaging should do. I think that should go to the QE core squad. How do we know about different teams? Well, there's a QA wiki and it describes multiple teams. There are actually more. The other teams didn't unfortunately mention themselves here, but at least for the core squad, they are there. And I know it's far from perfect, so you need a lot of internal knowledge to know and understand how the different teams manage their stuff. And I'm doing mistakes and always know all the things, but I assume this one should go to the course. So I guess it's QE core, could also be core. I actually can look that up because what I know is that QE core uses that if you track it directly and you find a lot of tickets which say QE core here. Let's check, do they also have a tag there's text bug busters. I don't know what that is. I will leave it to the team internally to look into that. But when was it? Yeah, here I'm pretty sure that should be cool. Let me also write that in comment. I'm pretty for this. Go to, or let's be overly nice and say, okay. So let's refresh that list, and then we will see it's down to one entry. So there's another entry. By the way, the list is just that short because the people doing it, triaging, like picking tickets out from the backlog or a fallback triager, do a good job already. So that's good. So what's this ticket about? That's from 9 months ago, updated 3 minutes ago. So it's actually, yeah, okay, I set the category, and Fabian Vogt was working on that days ago. It was originally, it was updated by Joaquin Rivera, who is the product owner of QA Yam Squad. Let me say he made a not optimal thing by moving the ticket back to the general backlog, meaning that it needs to be retried. This is why, gladly with the help of Marita Werner, she's trying to help triaging with the tickets, and she's then in that case asking Fabian, not as the assignee but as the reporter, how we should handle that ticket. I would say this might be specific to the staging project. So I guess I am wrong, but just putting it back to the QA Yam squad also doesn't help if they didn't want to work on that. So I put openSUSE there because this is what's commonly used in other issues to say it's, like something for the openSUSE release engineers to look into specifically. I would say this is kind of treated as an exception because most should really be done by the QE engineers who own the code rather than the release engineers or managers who have, let's say, a bit other responsibilities. But I know that Fabian is able to open just fine, so maybe he has a good idea. But let me put a comment there. They moved it back to the generic backlog without assigning to any other group, which is certainly not optimal. So, and then with that, putting that to user. Okay. Refreshing again. There we go. That list is also empty. Okay. So that means we have those 2 steps done. Perfect. Now I would like to tell you about the next section. We have service level objectives. So we decided within SUSE that we will take responsibility for the tickets in this issue tracker and all the according sub-projects, and defined multiple targets that we should read for. For example, for picking up tickets based on priority, the first goal is urgency removal, meaning like, there could be an immediate ticket, some mitigation is applied, the ticket is still open because still needs a proper solution, but we can reduce the priority. And for immediate tickets, that should happen within 1 day. If we take a look here, then this list should show no ticket, because that's the goal. And we see no ticket, which is good. So that means everything according to our objectives. Now let's check the same for urgent. Oops, there is one ticket showing up here. And that one was updated more than 1 month ago. So this is certainly an objective violation, and it should be handled accordingly. But not our scope now to handle that. This is why we have the tickets to show up tickets. That's why we have that query to show up tickets like that. We have high, and we can expect, because we have a lot of tickets, that there are also many more tickets showing up and more based on those SLOs. So high means that there should be an update at least every 30 days. And it's not about resolving a ticket, it's just that there is at least any activity in the ticket. And for normal, then it's, take a look at number, we have overall number, we have 77 tickets that violate. For low, it's undefined, so that basically means that, well, if that's the actual decision, that we cannot promise that this will be worked on within 1 year, the right priority to pick would be low. And that already correctly communicates to the outside what that means. It means don't expect that this will be solved or even worked on within 1 year. Or at least it's unlikely. I mean, it's possible, but unlikely, right? Within due date. So if a due date is set on tickets, then the due date should not be more than 10 days ago. And there are no tickets showing up here, which is good. That means that the SLO is it. And then there's also links to no closed tickets and no unassigned tickets. If we follow that, then we will find a report from openQA review. And what this one shows is ticket references to still failing openQA tests, and the ticket references show where there is a mismatch. For example, there's a test still showing problem, and the bug reference is a bug that is verified won't fix. So it's not only resolved won't fix meaning that, yeah, you just need to accept that behavior. It will not change. It's also verified won't fix. So somebody did that second level of validation to say, okay, we accept that the behavior won't change, but the test still fails. So, there's a mismatch. Either you need to, argue that the actual, that issue should still change, the product should change, or it means, and that's more likely here, that the test just needs to be adjusted so that it does accept the behavior as a given. And that's a soft fail. So it's likely that this is possible because the test already can apply a workaround and then continue. So just apply the workaround as the actual change to the test code to have it not fail anymore. And then make the test pass the step without any node or reference. This is for Bugzilla tickets. They're also, so this is all references to product bugs, which I think is good. If we scroll down further, then here we see an example of a test that is still failing, and it is referencing a resolved progress ticket. So similar situation there, where we say, well, the progress ticket in that case because it's resolved. It's like stating, yes, we fixed the test, we made it stable, but the test is still failing. So that cannot be the solution. And that means either the original solution wasn't effective here and the ticket should be reopened, or the test is failing due to another different issue and there should be a corresponding new or different ticket relating to it. Any questions or notes to that? Hope we're good. Okay. Yep. So this is the no closed tickets, and for no unassigned tickets, that's different. There's also a process described here, and this one also explains how text templates are automatically applied to tickets. So there's also a bot that will look into the tickets and then warn about or inform about that mismatch and tell in tickets. So, it would tell in a ticket like, hey, the ticket was set to immediate priority, but it wasn't updated. So check that, and urgent as well, and high and such, right? And this is defined within queries that you can find here. So that the very same queries, and in this project, openQA test backlog, that one executes what you can see here. So there's a backlog limits checker that's executing that 7 minutes ago. And that one is conducting those queries and checking against the expected limits and then updating tickets where needed. Reminder comments on issues. So let's assume that this still works fine. The last section here describes then basically what we saw in the reports, that there should be, that there can be closed tickets which are linked to still failing tests. So eventually openQA review will comment on tests. So the comment looks like this, where openQA review is commenting on a ticket that was resolved, but there's a test still failing related to that progress ticket. And there are multiple options provided in here. It's like, what can you do to, prevent further reminder comments and to actually fix the issue? There's also a note here, expect the next reminder at the earliest in 48 days if nothing changes in this ticket. So there will be multiple reminders, but with an exponential backoff if that does. And for that query, that I would say I consider that part of ticket. The initial ticket triaging is done, but part of a good ticket management is that those tickets are worked on and it's checked, like, okay, what can we do about that? Is it still the right assignee? Because maybe this is assigned to a person that has different obligations. Now maybe that person is on vacation or on sick leave or anything like that. So that should be checked on a second level. And that's it. This is how the ticket triaging is done. This is how ticket management should be done. Up to this level, individual teams or squads, they certainly have their own process around that. How do they act upon tickets within their scope? So there can be, if you're working in any, then there can be, let's say, customs extensions to that, extending that agreement, extending that process. But hopefully not being in conflict with them. And so this is how tickets are being worked on. Let me check how to file new tickets properly assigned to appropriate teams. We have covered that. Right issues. We have done that. That were done. The management best practice. Okay, cool. So I'm done with what I wanted to show you, what I wanted to walk through with you. Any comments or additions to that? Doesn't seem like it. So yeah, again, we don't have specific proposals for what we want to do in the next week. Let me check. It might be necessary to skip the workshop happening next week, so please stay tuned for that. Until then, thank you for attending and see you. Goodbye.